In 2007, an event occurred at a Portuguese resort that would later be called the crime of the century. A 3-year-old girl from England vanished without a trace from a hotel room, leading to the most expensive investigation in British history. This case became surrounded by dozens of theories and suspects, sparked international scandals, and the girl's parents were even received by the Pope himself. In this video, we have gathered all available information and tried to answer the main question: what happened to Madeleine McCann? In 2007, the couple Kate and Gerry McCann were on a 7-day vacation at the quiet Portuguese resort of Praia da Luz. For a British family with 3 children, the choice of location was quite obvious. Due to the huge number of tourists from the United Kingdom, Portuguese was only the 2nd or 3rd most frequently spoken language here after English. Locals called the resort Little Britain. Additionally, the resort had 3 children's centers, and it was also possible to book babysitting services for times when the playrooms were closed. The group consisted of 9 adults, each a medical professional, and 8 children, including the McCann's 2-year-old twins and their 3-year-old sister Madeleine. The couple's vacation was quite routine. Every day they had breakfast and lunch with their children in their apartment, and after meals, they would send them to the children's center for entertainment. Every evening, between about 8:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m., the adults would have dinner at a restaurant, leaving the children alone in the apartments, periodically stepping away to check on them. With the exception of one family who had a baby monitor. The restaurant was 55 meters from the apartment, and the McCanns had reserved a table for the entire duration of their stay, from which they could see the windows of their apartment. The bedroom faced the parking lot and garden and was located next to the back door. It had one window, which was barred and faced the parking lot. Madeleine's bed was at the other end of the room. The twins slept in travel cots, while Madeleine slept in one of the single beds with a pink cuddly cat toy. She was wearing a short-sleeved white and pink pajama set. On May 3rd at about 8:30 p.m., Kate and Gerry went to the restaurant. They left the sliding patio doors closed but unlocked. During dinner, the parents periodically went to check if everything was okay with the children. Their friends with whom they were dining did the same. At 9:05 p.m., the father went into the children's bedroom. According to him, everything was calm and Madeleine was sleeping in her bed. The only thing that was amiss: Gerry was sure he had left the bedroom door ajar, but upon his return visit, it was wide open. Not giving it much thought, he returned it to its previous position and went back to the restaurant. At 9:30 p.m., a family friend, Matthew Oldfield, offered to check on their children as well when he went to check on his own in the neighboring apartment. They agreed. Oldfield confirmed that everything was calm in the McCann's apartment and left. He later admitted that he did not see if Madeleine was in her bed at that moment. Kate went to check on the children at 10 p.m. She entered the apartment through the patio and before going into the bedroom where her children were sleeping, went to close the door. The door slammed shut as if from a draft. It was then she saw that the window was open from the outside. The twins were sleeping, Madeleine's cuddly toy was in her bed, but the girl herself was gone. After searching the apartment and not finding the child, Kate McCann rushed to the restaurant, screaming that her daughter had been abducted. As the McCann's friends, who saw them immediately after their daughter's disappearance, later recalled, the parents were in deep shock. The girl's mother almost immediately began to sob loudly and fell into a stupor, while her husband ignored people and looked under every parked car, hoping to find the child there. The parents searched for their daughter until 5 a.m. and only agreed to go to bed after much persuasion. By this time, the police were already examining the apartment. During the initial search of the apartment, the Portuguese police acted unprofessionally and made numerous mistakes. For example, investigators only notified Border Control 24 hours after the investigation began. This deprived local services of the opportunity to intercept the girl's potential abductors. In addition, Portuguese law enforcement failed to promptly collect fingerprints from the crime scene, did not establish a cordon around the apartment, and ultimately failed to prepare sufficient evidence. Half an hour after the girl's disappearance, a large-scale search involving several dozen people, including resort staff and guests, began. For about 6 hours, they combed the surroundings. There was hope that the girl, having become interested in something, had simply gone for a walk and would be found shortly. However, by morning it became clear. Something terrible had happened. Portuguese police interrogated the parents, restaurant staff, and family friends and searched the surrounding area. The child's disappearance was already being reported by the British media. The news was given to journalists by the McCann's friends, who believed that this would create public outcry and force the Portuguese police to work better. However, this led to a biased attitude from the police towards the parents. They believed that wide publicity could harm the case, reducing the chances of finding the girl. The tension was also fueled by the fact that throughout the investigation, the parents repeatedly accused the police of negligence and unprofessionalism.
Perhaps this is what led to the parents themselves being considered the first main suspects. The Portuguese police first voiced this theory 4 months after the girl's disappearance. According to their hypothesis, Kate and Gary, who had long worked as doctors, accidentally killed their daughter by giving her too large a dose of a sedative, hoping she would sleep until they returned. In the police's view, the parents feared responsibility for their actions and hid the body. They then created the impression for the public and the police that Madeleine had been abducted. Since then, they allegedly moved the body to a secret location and buried it. This theory was based on the reaction of 2 sniffer dogs. One was trained to find cadavers, and the other to find traces of blood. The dogs indicated traces in the McCann's apartment. One of the dogs detected the scent of a cadaver inside the car the couple rented 24 days after the girl's disappearance. Analysis of hair and fabric inside the car and apartment also detected something that aroused the suspicion of the Portuguese police. However, investigators later announced that neither the DNA test nor the results from the sniffer dogs were solid evidence of involvement in the incident. This was mainly because, in 70% of cases, the animals confused the cadaver scent with others, and the DNA tests proved to be too inaccurate. Witnesses came forward who claimed to have seen a man carrying a sleeping girl in his arms that evening. Suspicion fell on a 30-year-old British man, Robert Murat, who lived 3 minutes from the apartment in his mother's house. For several months, he was the main suspect, but no evidence against him could be found. Then another tourist came forward, who said that on that evening, he was returning to his room with his own daughter in his arms. After further verification, it became clear that witnesses had mistaken him for the abductor. All charges were dropped against Robert Murat. He even managed to sue for and win compensation from British tabloids that had effectively declared him a criminal. Time passed, but the parents did not lose hope of finding their daughter alive. They contacted a British PR firm. The distraught parents met with the U.S. Attorney General and the Pope and participated in numerous talk shows. They also founded the Madeleine Fund, which received £2 million in less than a year. Meanwhile, British investigators worked in parallel with the Portuguese, examining evidence and questioning witnesses. But leads were few, and in 2008, the Portuguese police closed the case. In 2011, UK Home Secretary Theresa May initiated an investigation called Operation Grange. As part of it, a team of top British detectives was tasked with solving the mystery of Madeleine McCann's disappearance. A huge sum was allocated for the investigation. Dozens of people in Portugal and England were questioned again. The head of the team, Senior Investigating Officer Andy Redwood, was confident. The possibility of finding the child alive remained. During the operation, everyone convicted of crimes against children, restaurant staff, and tourists vacationing at the resort were checked. However, no theory was confirmed. During their work on the case, detectives received more than 8,000 reports from people who claimed to have seen Madeleine. The main bulk of the claims came from the USA, the UK, Switzerland, Mexico, and Singapore. It is known that the investigation checked more than 100 such leads, but information about them is either classified or unconfirmed. Despite the fact that the theory of the parents' involvement in Madeleine's disappearance was repeatedly refuted, Gonçalo Amaral, the head of the initial investigation by the Portuguese police, held on to it for a long time. In July 2008,
He published a book and a subsequent documentary, The Truth of the Lie, in which he claimed that the McCanns had faked their daughter's disappearance to cover up her murder. Amaral spoke of the book as a collection of official evidence, but Madeleine's relatives described the work as absurd and false. Despite this, the book became a bestseller, earning the publisher and the author, by some estimates, more than $1 million. After the book's release, the investigator gave interviews to various TV channels, continuing to blame Madeleine's parents for the incident and claims that her body is still hidden in Praia de Luz. He later claimed that the parents had allegedly cremated their daughter in a church near the crime scene.
At one point, the theory that the girl was abducted to order for a wealthy family was considered. However, investigators find this version doubtful. Madeleine disappeared just 9 days before her 4th birthday. At this age, a child remembers their relatives well and is unlikely to easily accept strangers as a new family. There was also a theory that the girl was an accidental victim of robbers. According to this theory, some intruders broke into the room to rob it, but were caught by a waking Madeleine. Fearing that the girl could identify them, the robbers kidnapped her and then killed her. However, this version seems completely unconvincing for many reasons. Firstly, if the robbers really decided to get rid of the girl, why take her from the room? Moreover, it's hard to believe they were so frightened that a small child who saw them in a dark room could remember their faces. According to British journalist Mark Colin, Madeleine was not abducted from her bed. Most likely, she left the apartment in search of her parents, after which she was abducted by strangers, the reporter believes. He supported his version with the position of the window shutters, which were closed when the police arrived and could only be opened from the inside. No signs of forced entry were found on them, nor on the front door. In Colin's opinion, this indicates that robbers, or intruders, did not enter the apartment. The McCanns disagreed with Colin's version, believing that she could not have gone outside on her own. To do so, she would have had to open the front door, go through the sliding doors and an iron gate that had a child-proof lock, and then close it behind her. The journalist countered this by noting that the parents did not even know that the shutters in the apartment could not be opened from the outside. Initially, the couple stated that the window shutters were open. If Madeleine did indeed go outside in her parents' absence, she could have been the victim of several accidents. At that time, 180 meters from the McCann's house, workers were repairing drains. For this, they had dug a trench 182 centimeters deep and 120 centimeters wide. The girl could have fallen into this pit and lost consciousness, and the next day, when the tunnel was filled in, she might simply not have been noticed. This version was refuted by the responsible foreman. According to him, his men and the police had checked the trench. British politician and writer Clement Freud, the grandson of Sigmund Freud, was even considered a suspect. He was a friend of the McCann family and also had a house in Praia de Luz. The man himself died in 2009, and in 2016, several women accused him of child molestation. No evidence was found to support this theory, so it was effectively dismissed. There is a theory that the girl was kidnapped and sold into slavery. Initially, witness statements mentioned 2 men who were seen near the hotel. They were allegedly members of an international gang that kidnapped children to order for influential pedophiles. It is suggested that the criminals have very extensive connections, including with the Portuguese police. This would explain why the latter sabotaged the investigation and put forward hypotheses that were as far from the truth as possible. In 2015, the number of active investigators on the Madeleine case was reduced from 28 to 4, and by 2017,
The British authorities had spent a total of more than $19 million on the investigation. The public repeatedly criticized the government for such large expenditures on a case that had diminishing chances of being solved each year. At that moment, it really seemed that there was almost no chance of finding answers. But everyone was wrong. In 2020, the case was being handled not only by investigators from Portugal and England, but also from Germany. It was the latter who made a sensational announcement. 13 years after the girl's disappearance, the likely culprit was known. At first, his name was not disclosed, so as not to harm the investigation. In June 2020, German police laid all their cards on the table. The main suspect is a German national, Christian Bruckner, previously convicted of child molestation. Along with this, investigators also voiced the most disheartening theory. The girl is most likely no longer alive. In May 2007, the day before Madeleine's disappearance, Bruckner told one of his ex-girlfriends that he had a job for the next day. He called this job horrible, but said he had to do it. 3 years later, another of his girlfriends joked that Bruckner looked like one of the police sketches of a possible kidnapper of a little girl. She even asked him if he was the one who had kidnapped the child. That time, the man did not give a direct answer, but just shrugged his shoulders. The German prosecutor's office reported another grim detail. The suspect had discussed the girl's kidnapping in a conversation with another pedophile online. According to the prosecutor, Bruckner abducted the girl, abused her, and killed her. Moreover, he believes that this is far from the only such crime committed by the man. At the time Bruckner was named the main suspect, he was serving a sentence in a German prison. Police from 3 countries began to promptly investigate Bruckner's involvement in Madeleine's disappearance. They dug up 2 plots of land belonging to the man, and in both cases, they made major discoveries. Under one of the plots, they found a cellar, which the newspapers called a secret room. Law enforcement did not disclose information about what they managed to find, but they positioned it as a major find. On the second plot, they discovered a buried box with flash drives and video players. Their contents were also not disclosed. Apparently, they contained gruesome footage involving other victims of Bruckner, but not Madeleine. Bruckner himself did not react to the accusation of kidnapping the girl. It is only known that immediately after his name was made public, the man was placed under increased security. There is still a chance that he will confess to his crime and ease the suffering of the parents who have been searching for an answer for 18 years. Even if this does not happen, and the police do not find any significant evidence, the vast majority of investigators are convinced it is Bruckner who is involved in this high-profile case. The emergence of a main suspect has renewed public interest in the 18-year-old disappearance. It may once again hit the front pages of newspapers if Madeleine is alive. On May 12, 2025, she would have turned 22. Her parents still believe that their daughter is out there somewhere, but in recent years, they have shown less activity and have devoted more time to their other 2 children. Despite this, the girl's mother still buys her gifts for every holiday and believes that one day she will see her daughter again. Subscribe to the channel to listen to these real and scary stories. Sometimes these stories end well, but more often badly. It's disturbing.